my computer.
Hopefully.
All right, here we
Quincy.
go. How you been, man?
Good, good, good. I think it's been a while. I'm in my little notes here, and last time we chatted was, I think, August 7th,
Are you serious?
like on a podcast. I could be wrong.
Dude, we text every other day. We should like have some of those text messages in
Yeah.
in the
Do like one a
podcast
month at
form.
least.
But you told me that the most the biggest thing on the things to talk about was the Elon Musk thing.
Yeah.
So,
It's not even Elon Musk. It's like human behavior.
well, yeah, yes. Well, you know what? The thing about Elon is that he brings up so much. He's like a catalyst for a lot of things that happens. Like he may make a comment and then, or he may do a thing, and all of a sudden the whole world is like reacting to it.
Mm,
And I saw that what you was talking about the salute
Nazi
thing.
salute thing. Yeah.
I saw, and when I saw it, I was like, I saw it on Twitter, of course, and I'm gonna call it Twitter. I know it's X, whatever, but
Yeah.
yeah, I saw it on Twitter, and then I immediately ignored it. Like it was, I was
Yeah.
like, they're doing that again.
Yeah.
But then after that, some of my friends back home, they're,
Hmm. Yeah.
they're
You
in
have
a
to
different
say
world. Sent me this stuff, and I'm like, why are you sending me this? I didn't. Most of the time, when people send me, like I said, like this whole year has been, well, not this year, but 2024 has been just a grinded out year for me, and so when they sent me that stuff, I just automatically I just laughed, literally type LOL, and that
it.
was my comment, and I was done with it. I was
Yeah.
like, I'm not going to talk about this, man. But
I had a
what you
friend that
want
reached out, same thing, asked about like repeatedly missing, like, oh, do you see Trump's or not Trump, Musk as a Nazi, basically,
yeah,
and mentioned him like, oh, do you see him doing the Nazi salute? And I just ignored it it's an old college roommate, and like I don't want to get into an argument because it's literally like there's no way we're gonna convince each other. It's just locked. It's just locked in. So I don't want to. I've been in multiple of those conversations with him, uh, but yeah, I just kept seeing it come up. Like you couldn't get away from it, right? It's one of those things where like you eerily feel that like this isn't off. The reaction isn't authentic, and it's and then you start thinking, oh, this is mainstream media, but then you're thinking like, well, I thought mainstream media was dead. This is my thought process, but no, it's not dead. It
I had
like
the same
disseminates through
process.
social media,
Yeah,
like it. So like mainstream media, even though nobody's watching it, 600,000 viewers or whatever, like if they put something out there, the journalists are on Twitter or X and when all the other social medias, and who knows, they may have AI doing a bunch of posts where it's just like it just disseminates like crazy, and then it just creates this narrative, and then on the receivers get people texting us about it. Then I'm even I go places I don't want to. I go for like LinkedIn for work shit, right? And then all of a sudden, like I'm getting it over and over and over, and it's the algorithms and surfing it to the top, and it's just like big image, Elon with looking like this, and people pissed off, and like you know how they, and it's just virtue signaling about how I know we're not supposed to talk about work, but when there's
it's.
Nazis,
I mean, it's hilarious because it's so. Well, the first thing is man, I sympathize with you because I maybe on Twitter I've like blocked or muted a lot of people. So not blocked a lot of people. I think I've muted a lot of people that say stuff that's just outlandish like that. And
mm-hmm,
I thought it was just a funny. I literally laughed when someone did that, sent that to me.
mm-hmm,
But then I think you sent me something that was on LinkedIn. But first, I was shocked it was on LinkedIn. I was like, "What?"
yeah,
But then after I got out of the initial shock, I read what I was like. So people really believe this? I was like,
mm-hmm,
"Wow, that's what." I think I don't know when I sent you the other message, and I was like, man, people are so disappointing. I'm like, I'm really, I mean, it's
I'm still
funny.
shocked. Like I've been I never do this, but now on LinkedIn I'm reporting the
Oh wow,
posts. I'm
that's serious.
reporting them. Like I'm going through and taking my time to actually spend 30
That
seconds to
makes you serious.
report
Well,
every one. I've never done that my entire life because it's one, I'm just irritated that like it's not even it's politics. If you know that president that died, like okay, you could put that on LinkedIn, President Carter or whatever.
yeah,
Uh, that would be fine. But when you're talking about like divisive uh propaganda and you're attacking the other side and you put that on LinkedIn, that's when I'm like, no, this is garbage. Not only that, it's like I'm just flabbergasted at the reasoning or the lack of reasoning where you go from like you go from just watching that and automatically saying like, oh, he's doing a Nazi salute. This isn't by accident. This is intentional. What do you think's going to come next? Holocaust 2.0 is like you look at Elon Musk's previous behavior, like he's always been positive around Israel and like and you look at everything past evidence. Nope, let's erase all that. Now he did this thing that looks like a Nazi salute, or someone told you it looks like a Nazi salute. But and then what's funny is like, of course, like the opposite side. Now they're putting like images of all the Democrats who've even Tim
done the
Waltz.
exact
He did
same
the
thing.
literally the exact same thing. Did the like the
My
hand to the
heart goes
heart.
out to you.
Yeah,
Like it's just
Tim
like
Waltz did
how.
it, and it's just ridiculous. I saw one with Taylor Swift looking like this.
Well, it's and I've been thinking one thing that's been occupying my mind. I think I told you this over the holidays. Is like IQ and that kind of thing. I don't think. Well, IQ is a whole separate conversation in itself, but it's like what I've kind of realized, and this is it sound like the last time I said this, the person I said it to was like, man, that's the most pretentious thing that anyone has ever said. But it's like, how can I deny reality? Like the way I see the world, I'm a very rational person, and rational people are not by any means the majority and are very few and far between. I'm like, when you see something like that, I'm like, I'm fascinated by what are the mental gymnastics that it takes for you to so or you
Mm-hmm,
even it touches a lot of more subjects like the subject of IQ. I mean, that's kind of related, but not really. I mean, I'm not by any
mm-hmm,
means saying that you're a low IQ person if you do that because
mm-hmm.
that's just not a
Yeah.
right assumption. But the other thing is that there's a lot of projection going on, or
Mm-hmm,
not projection per se, like, when you're in an argument and then the other person is projecting their feelings on you, but a
mm-hmm,
lot of people are living inside their own heads and not, I think it's a lack of empathy, but not empathy in the traditional sense. Empathy, I can't talk, as in trying to figure out why another person does what they
mm-hmm,
do if that makes sense.
mm-hmm.
Understanding another person, and if you understand other people, it's like how can you think, what are the mental gymnastics that are going on in your head that makes you think that Elon Musk is a Nazi because he just does something that everyone else does? It doesn't make any
Mm-hmm.
sense to
Yeah, the mental gymnastics piece is where human behavior comes in because it's like it doesn't matter. Like IQ goes out the window, rationality goes out the window when belief systems come into play, and I think that's what it is. Like I think I sent you a quote from Sherlock Holmes. It says Sherlock Holmes says, "Insensibly, one begins to twist facts to suit theories instead of theories to suit facts."
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me.
so
And
you come in and here's the analogy I was thinking about. Let's imagine like you see this let's just say you didn't see this picture and someone was like, is Elon Musk a Nazi? Okay. Now imagine they go to Chat GBT and they say, find evidence that Elon Musk is a Nazi. That's basically the line of thinking that people go down. And then oh, and then you get then Chat GPT goes, oh, I found it. here's an image of a Nazi salute, um, and then it's like, okay, he's a Nazi. That's Chat GPT, or like, large language models AI will basically give you any answer you want it to give you. Like, you can just tell it to say, like, find evidence that Elon Musk is a Nazi, and he'll give it. It's like, it will confirm your bias, right? That's how that's the, like, the mindset people are in. It's like, if you are a Catholic, doesn't matter what you see that opposes Catholicism, it's not gonna, like, change your mind, even
Yeah,
even if it's rational.
that's what I think a lot about. Of when it comes to religion, I always compare it to religion because religion is the ultimate. Like, I mean, we can question people about, I don't know, their belief that in silly stuff like this. But at the same time, I mean, there's no empirical evidence that there's a God. But, a lot of us still believe in God. Is that just as silly as this? I don't know. But at the same time, it's just like their belief. The way I look at it is, and this is I wrote up this whole entire thing about how to disseminate fact from fiction in the world. And you really don't go about the world going through and saying, hey, this is fact or fiction, unless you like that sort of thing. The way that you do go about the world, and or let me rephrase that, the way you should, in my opinion, go about the way in the world is this practical or is it not practical? How useful is it to believe? Like, what is this belief useful? Most people aren't going to do this, but this is just how I think about it.
Mm-hmm.
How useful is it for you to believe that Elon is a Nazi?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is that going to get you in life? How is that? And then when you think about it from that perspective, I'm like, oh, I see what it is. It's a culture, it's a tribe. It gives you social capital in that
Virtue
group.
signaling, yeah, yeah,
You see what I'm saying?
yeah,
I'm like,
yeah,
now I'm seeing how it's practical. And
yeah.
they may not see it that way, but that's really the only angle that I can think of that
It's
makes
social points that moves
that.
you up in the hierarchy, and
Yeah,
you're
exactly, exactly.
it's a
That's
signal to everybody in your tribe that you are in the tribe and you are supporting the tribe and you're not going to leave this tribe. Because yeah, if you do anything that goes against the tribe, then you could be shunned. You could be
well,
outcasted.
the reason why my mind went to that is me, like I've ran into this multiple times, like as a black dude, and like most of my friends back home are black, and I'm from Mississippi, so they send me stuff like that, and I see the stuff they post, and I'm like, I can make a rational argument of why that a rational, empirical, and logical argument why that's bullshit. However, that would never matter because that's not the factuality of what you're talking about is not why you believe what you believe. You
Mm-hmm.
didn't come to that conclusion. You're like, oh, these are the things I
Yeah.
believe, and I believe because of this, this, this. You either believe one because that's what your social atmosphere expects of you, and number two, since media is a whole big other topic, but it's kind of related because media sets the stage for
Mm-hmm.
these belief systems.
Oh,
Because
100%.
the same person who sent me that other image about Elon, she was like so bent out of shape that Trump uh was going to release those January 6th people.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Pardon them or
And
whatever.
and I'm constantly in a state of like, do I need to address this or like
Yeah.
what? Well,
It's,
she was like
I'm in the
trying to
same way.
get, but she was like, how they poke the people
Yeah,
try to
yeah,
poke the bear, and she was
yeah,
like, look at your boy, blah blah blah, and I'm
yeah.
like, well, like what? I, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh,
But you
100%. I get in
understand?
that all the time. Where it's like I fall victim to it all the time. Like, just like your brain it even if you don't respond, it gets to you because your brain starts creating responses. It starts rehearsing what your response would be. It like starts thinking in comebacks, and your brain's like gets into that tribal state. and that's ego, man. It's like we we have an identity, and our identity we need to uphold. And so then like the ego starts giving you these thoughts of like you need to uphold that identity and you need to go fight that. Like, oh, they're trying to take your identity away. You need to stand up, like your ego and your brain, right? um but
Yeah.
it's the same way on their end as well. Like they're upholding their identity, and um it's yeah, it's human nature is a funny game, man. It's a wild thing. It does, like, a lot of it is basically just social dynamics, like, so your peers. um it's all based of like group. It's group behavior, really, a lot of it. Like,
Yeah.
if I put you in a room, like if you were in a if you put these people that were posting that on if you put them in a study and you showed them like Elon's speech, and then like just tell me your thoughts about this, right? With no like outside uh influence, they would never think, oh, Nazi salute. They would
Yeah.
never think that. Never think of it.
Yeah, and it's come to a point where I went down that rabbit hole, that similar rabbit hole, and I was like, well, it's not a rabbit hole, but the similar thought process, and I was like, I said something that kind of was off to the side of it, just tiptoeing around the issue, but because I already know like there's this dynamic between us, and like the dynamic is that it was one thing she said to me that just really hit home like a couple of months ago. And this speaks to my identity and the ego that I have, and what, like, how I have to protect my identity when it comes to situations like that. And it came from, I was like, why can't you just send me something that isn't propaganda, or send me or have a objective discussion that isn't biased, and ask questions about this. If you Why are you coming to me, just like you just said, like, you're going to chat GBT and you're typing in, send me information that Elon is a Nazi.
Yeah,
That's how her mind literally works. And
yeah.
so I was like, why can't you, when you send me stuff, have questions, or question it before you send it,
Hmm.
or give me a source, and not some Joy Reid. She literally sends me Joy Reid stuff.
Yeah,
Stop sending me that stuff.
yeah.
And I went through this whole thing because I was frustrated. I was like, I don't care about what you believe. I care that you're understanding what you believe.
Mm.
And her, you know what her response was to that? You want me to be a robot. I'm only human. And I was like, that was the perfect response. I didn't have a response. I couldn't say anything. I was like, you're right. I didn't have a response. I was like,
Oh, that's
yeah, that
hilarious. You
makes
want me to
sense.
robot?
I'm expecting people to do the rational thing and be objective, because that's my identity. And
Hmm.
I protected, I feel like I protected a lot, because I'm like, there's not a lot of people who think the way I do. So it's like me against the tribe always. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It in that context where the whole the political thing, the tribe, it's tribal, and like, and it it's a very strong aspect of like your identity, herd identity. I have a friend that does the same thing. But it's interesting when I talk about that friend in a similar conversation that you have. It's like he sees me in the same way, where I'm like, I'm completely delusional. I'm like, I'm ass backwards. I'm like, I'm deluded. I I'm supporting someone, or I'm supporting like Nazism, yada yada yada, right? Like
mhm.
it's I'm and what's interesting about that is just like it's crazy that it's crazy that we two people can be like completely opposed about facts. Like the Elon Musk thing. That's what's so great about the Elon. It's a great example. It's beautiful. Like I'm glad it happened that you can just put an Elon Musk doing a Nazi thing and like or a salute, from my heart. I can't even
He
remember
said
what it
from
said. Like
he said something about from my
my,
heart to yours, or
yeah,
something like that.
yeah, and it's like the dude's like on the autistic spectrum. He has to be like
No, he
he's so
definitely is.
goofy. He's so goofy coming out there. He's so excited and stuff, and he's like bouncing around. Yes, and like he was doing a bunch of shit with his hands anyway. And he's just goofy, and that's all I thought of it. It's like he's just a goofy dude.
That's
Um,
exactly what I said. Actually, that when I said I was told I was tiptoeing around the issue, that's exactly what I said. I was like,
yeah,
yeah, he's doing Elon Musk things. Like,
yeah, yeah. Oh, to segue a little bit, but kind of still hang on to that like logical piece. I, I told you to listen to the telepathy tapes, and um, what's interesting about the telepathy tapes is like I've for anyone like if someone's listening to this and haven't listened to the telepathy tapes, it's basically showing seemingly like strong evidence for ESP, telepathy, and a lot of other strange things like being able to access a realm and communicate that's seemingly like one universal consciousness. Like you can communicate. It's almost like an internet for like people um, outside of the ego, outside of the human realm. It's like another dimension, and like what's so it ties our last conversation because rationally, logically, that doesn't make sense to normal cognitive functioning people like you or I, where like our left and right hemisphere of our brain are completely normal. There's no damage. Well, we probably have some damage, but not as to the length of the degree of the people to the
yeah,
autistic people that they talk about the telepathy tapes. They have a certain amount of brain damage because they're autistic, they're nonverbal, and so now in some way the brain has adapted to now be able to access this other dimension and do telepathy. And it like without these nonverbal autistics uh showing like evidence for this,
uh-huh.
I would have been like, well, that's not logical. If you would have told me this 10 years ago or 20 years ago, I would have been like, you're fucking idiot. Like this is not rational. This is not logical. Um, and people are still saying the same thing, right? Like you're still claiming, people are skeptical. Um, I'm not really that skeptical anymore. It seems legitimate. And the reason I say it seems legitimate is because like I've heard the same things. I listened to all 8 episodes, which are like 45 minutes long, and like all the things they say follow a lot of the spirituality things that I've listened to over the years, whether it's podcasts, books, Eastern philosophy, what God means. It all like is kind of coalesced into like the thing that they're talking about, this other dimension, this realm that these nonverbal people I have access to, is essentially what all religions call God. Uh, and like you have an identity beyond Earth, beyond human form, when you die. Like there's still some type of identity. Um, it's absolutely blown my mind to the point like let me here's the thing I've been thinking about recently. Like when I was probably 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, I used to have these thoughts where I would be like, I would think about something complicated. Like I was eating breakfast this morning. We had mushrooms at the table, and
You
people,
got mushrooms for breakfast.
yeah, like like shiitake mushrooms or something,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
My wife made like a hash, and I'm thinking like mushrooms sit on like a web of mycelium that has like this interconnective like web of communication that helps like trees and plants all talk to each other, right? It's like this intense like intelligence underneath like the earth, like the forest floor. And so mushrooms are like there's so strong nutritional effects and yada yada yada. Humans can't understand the it would take us another 1,000 years of science to be able to understand what mushrooms effects on humans and like what they actually are. Do they have a consciousness? Yada yada yada. And so my thought process was like, well, if I could ask God, um, then God could tell me, right? I used to have those like thought processes when I was a kid. I was like, what would do if you met God? What would you ask God, right? Now, my brain as a 38-year-old man, now I'm thinking like, dude, I want to go ask like whether it's mushrooms, like how sentient is a mushroom when I eat it? What's the inner what does it have effects on my consciousness? Those types of things, the hard questions like humans will never answer. I want to go ask this autistic person, this like spiritual savant, and ask him like that. I want to ask him all these like tough questions, because it seems like they have access to this like this universal consciousness. They know a bunch of different languages, like just they've never in the way they explain it is like they learn it. They like go into this realm, and there's they're basically this information is there. They explain it as like our responsibility as humans in this like egotistic life is to go create, learn, and then this information gets like downloaded into the consciousness for other people to consume. It's almost like a database, like an internet. It's like this fucking like, and so these people go and they have access. These autistics have like access to this information, and they just fucking learn it very quickly. They can read a book in minutes, or seconds, and it's blown my entire socks off. What did you, how many of you listened to, and what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I only listened to two, the first two. I mean, I listened to it and I'm like, it's just a podcast. And I don't know. I didn't really I did for some reason I can't believe it
Mm-hmm.
because it doesn't it's like, okay, well, but you got to understand the way my mind works is you need to like give me like I need to see this 100 times because that's something so incredible and extra. You ever heard someone say extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence? I don't know if that's the
Carl
right.
Sagan. That's exactly right. That's the quote from
But
Carl Sagan.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I feel. I'm like, but when you first brought it up, I was just Googling something, right? And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I know the consolation prize in this is that's exactly what. And you probably heard this guy before because I brought him up in our previous conversations. Um, was his name Roger Penrose? I was like,
Mm.
now I remember this guy. I don't know if you went too far or how far our conversation went with this guy, but he's a mathematician and he thinks he's been thinking this for a long time. That's why I'm like I heard a lot of this stuff before. He's been thinking this for a while. I think decades now. Like maybe the dude is like in his 90s, I believe. And he thinks that and it's just a theory, and he makes it clear that it's just a theory, that exactly what you said, that like our consciousness is somehow in a way all connected.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's experiments that were done with like, you know how they say information or knowledge about the environment is passed on, it's passed from generation to generation, and most of the time it's passed on through like, I don't know, like teaching, and some of the stuff is in our genetics. Well, they did some experiments with that suggests that it may be something else, like some like memory, conscious memory that's outside of our bodies or something like that. It's been a long time since I read that, since I've been listening to this guy, but that sounds very similar to that. So that's like, I don't really doubt that is true. It's just like, what am I going to do with this information? Because I can't really confirm or deny it. And it's like, I just need I need this to be something that other people talk about it.
Yeah, yeah,
You to see it repeated over and over again in
yeah,
certain scenarios. But
yeah,
it's not like I don't believe it. It's just that like I don't know.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's where it stops. It's like, oh, that's interesting. But it's like, is that real or not? I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Even with this mathematician guy, he keeps trying to prove it's that some people call him a what do they call people like a quake or something like that, or the derogatory word for
Oh, I
people,
don't know. Oh, a quirk. No, not
a
a quirk.
quake or something like
What
that.
is it?
It's
A quack.
quack. Yeah, like some people call him a quack, but like he's written books about it, and the reason why here's the reason why I would never deny something like that is because think about 100, 200 years ago. Look how we're talking to each other with this video. I'm looking at a laptop screen with stuff on it, and I'm like, how does this stuff? Like, if I was back
Mhm.
in the 1800s and I saw a laptop, like, I would think that this shit is magic.
Yeah.
So, what do you think is going to happen in the next 200 years? That's why I'm like, dude, like, I don't know what to do with that, but that sounds amazing, and maybe we will get to a point where we can really pinpoint that consciousness that you speak of. That's how I see it. I don't know if that's
Keep, keep watching more episodes because she basically just keeps going and going and talking to more nonverbal autistics, and like she'll go to a different state, and they have this concept of this place called the Hill, these nonverbal autistics, where they go and talk, and it's basically like an internet chat room. Thousands of nonverbal autistics on this, and sometimes other people can access this that aren't non nonverbal autistics. Like they just have like a special ability. They're almost like a savant. Um, but it's like a spiritual savant, I guess is what they're calling them. And so like she would go talk to this person, say in Wyoming, never met this other person. They're nonverbal autistic. They're like, they're sometimes violent, they're erratic. These people are like
Mhm.
can't really operate in the real world. Um, they know of by name and know things about these other people like all across the world, like in Indiana, like Wyoming and Indiana. Like, there's no way she's never been to Indiana. There's no way she would know them. And then, of course, the test of like doing ESP tests where like, the mom is reading a book. She just give them a new book. She looks at the image, and then the autistic person's like, yeah, and they get it right 100% of the time. And they know exactly what she's thinking, and it's like, she's coming out with a documentary, but like they dive into the science, and I looked into some of the research. They've done these tests, these experiments where they put like Quincy in a room, and it's basically like a sensory deprivation room, not like a tank, but a room. And after 15 minutes, like your senses kind of just like go away, and you're in this dark room. You can't hear anything, see anything. There's nothing to feel. And then they put some on the other side of the room, and they remove everything, like it's like electromagnetic wave like blocking and stuff. So it literally removes everything where it could potentially like uh hurt the experiment. And then those people above the normal like average, it was statistically significant that they were like doing ASP. So like you and I po- potentially have this latent ability that we're not using, uh, because here's my theory: like us as humans, we've adapted. If we were like non-autistic, if we were autistic non-verbals, like we would die. Mother Nature wouldn't allow us to have those types of people, right?
Yeah.
Um, or like we have the ability to to talk, so we don't need to communicate through like these other like ESP ways. Um, that's kind of my theory on it. And so like someone nonverbal, your brain just adapts and is like, oh, well, now I got to start using these other different modalities to communicate. And one of them's ESP, and it's like accessing this other realm. Uh, Here, the crazy part is like they get into animals. There's this book called like something along the lines of like your dog knows when you're coming home.
Hmm.
So they do these experiments with dogs, and dogs can't talk, so maybe potentially there's some type of ESP going on
Hmm.
with their owners. And so what happens, like you as an owner, you leave your house, you go to the grocery, and what they started doing is like as soon as you put your intention, your thought on like headed home, like oh, you just register, bam, you like I'm going home. The dog gets off the couch, starts getting excited, goes to the door, and then they even did like follow up studies, and this was like statistically significant. It wasn't like 100% of the time all dogs
Hmm.
are ESP, but it was statistically significant in experimental um, fashion. And but then they even did things where they interrupt it and be like, okay, now act like you like stop and say, oh, you forgot something. And then
Hmm.
they'd be like, oh, you go back in, and the dog gets back on the couch and lays back down. And it's like, oh, because the dog like
Oh, I have to.
realizes.
You have to send this to me, man.
Yeah, I haven't read the book, but like the guy who wrote the book on like
Uh-huh.
dogs know when you're coming home or whatever the title is. And that blew my mind. And then they did a talking parrot. Um, there's a parrot that talked, and it basically would like the owner would like think something, and the parrot would say the word, and they've never said that word before. And that's fucking wild. That fucking blew my mind. Uh, and this wasn't in the podcast, but my brother sent me something because he listened to the tapes too. Is apparently your like you have house plants. Like I have one behind me, and whoever waters the house plants, um, the plant. So like say I water these two house plants behind me,
I've heard this
and
before.
when I'm start to come home, like the plants change, right? The plants change because I've like set this intention. But you hear it's not surprising to me because like I hear this in the spiritual communities a lot where uh these types of things have been talked about for a long time, but nobody's believed them. Um, and things like even remote viewing is a concept that's like way out there. Like I'm completely skeptical of remote viewing. You can remote view and go to like the Rome Colosseum, right? Uh, but if this other dimension does exist, this other realm does exist, then you could easily do that. You could access that if you had some type of latent ability. And um, it seems like that's what is happening with these autistics. And even in that podcast, man, they start talking to like the people that have died, and they see people that have died, and they start talking about people that died. And like, I've been skeptical about this shit my entire life. Even the problem is, and Carl Sagan talks about this a lot, is that the world's full of charlatans. And so if I go down to the psychic ESP reader down the block, which there is one, this person's probably a charlatan. They're using
Well, there's literally one on my block.
yeah, there literally is one over down the road too. It's not literally down the block, but it's down the road within a minute. And they're using uh they're just very good at human behavior, and they're probably using um what's it called when you kind of paralyze somebody's mind, and what's that fucking called?
Hypnosis.
Yeah, hypnosis. Yeah, they use like hypnosis type of things, and then they're able to kind of like, and they're just very good, and the people that come there are very credulous, and so then it's like that's the problem. That's the problem. This doesn't.
Here's a question I have. I have one question. The thing I wouldn't say it causes me to be skeptical, but it's like the one question that I have is I'm listening to you say these things, right? Just like I listen to the podcast. I don't have there's nothing in me that's like, oh, that didn't happen, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. But the question I have, you're taking a leap by saying, how, well, how is it that you're saying that this stuff is spiritual? That's what I want to know because it's totally plausible these things are happening. But what makes these things spiritual? What that's what I want to know.
For one, they talk about it in a spiritual way. They even mention God as like, see, God from an Eastern philosophy perspective, say Hinduism, Buddhism, etc. It's not, so Western religions versus Eastern religions. Western religions think about God as this external deity, and Eastern religions more look at it as like this universal oneness, this consciousness, this the Atman, the Dharma, the Hindus call it, the the Quakers call it the inner light, uh, and it's exactly what they're talking about. Like it's as if, and it's how I always thought about God over the past 10 years. Is exactly what they're describing. Is this like it's more of this like energy, this like universal energy that is the substrate of all reality. The all reality is consciousness, is the way they've described it, these autistics, and everything else dimensionalizes on top of it. So if if consciousness, and we are just like aspects of consciousness, we're essentially, Alan Watts is a famous like Eastern philosopher, and he says that like um
Yeah,
it's essentially like the ocean, right? And the waves are people, and it's like a tree versus the leaves. We are leaves. We are aspects of it. Um, so like the universe peoples, just like the way like the ocean waves. Um, and that's how I kind of think about it. Is it's like an ocean, but it's like some type of like ocean that we don't we obviously can't understand in the egotistic world. Um, and it, yeah, so that's why I bring it in a spiritual sense, because it like it matches everything I've read and heard, and people talk about, like the gurus that I listen to. This is what they've talked about, and it's like even in Christian mysticism. I read this book on Christian mysticism, and they talk about it too. They talk about like God is within, and it's like um it's more like not an entity. It's like you are God is essentially the revelation, and you are God because you are a part of, like, we're all one, and it's universal consciousness. And so like we our egos, because we're in this like human suit, uh we get diluted, and because we're trying to survive in this context, but then in reality, like, we're not, that's not who we really are.
mm,
What
what's funny?
do you think about that?
Um,
It's made me more spiritual, man. It's made me believe in heaven, for Christ's sake.
really?
Yeah. Heaven, and of course, like, everything's ba- based off your interpretation of the word, right?
What do you think? Okay, I'm gonna ask two separate questions. What do you think? What do you think heaven is, and what is your interpretation of heaven?
Yeah. So I see heaven as like, see, again, it's the problem with Western religions, is like we saw heaven as like this external thing. We look at it through a human view. And it's like this external thing that all the good people go when they're good. Um, I think that that's somewhat true. But the humans got involved, and you don't just go there because you're good. Um, Good and bad has nothing to do with it. It's it's that realm. It's the consciousness realm. It's this universal consciousness, and
Mhm.
that is heaven. We talked about as humans, tried to articulate it because over time people probably had access to certain special people had access to it. These saints, these people who talked about it in special ways. These oracles that the Greeks and the Romans they used to go to. Potentially, they truly had like special powers. Now, um, it's just it's like this. It's what they talk about. It's the place where you can where the ego is gone. You know, I've been there on like psychedelic trips. Like I've
Dude, I still need to do
yeah
the,
stuff.
yeah, the stuff.
I've
But
I've been there, but not like in the way that the autistic kids talked about. But I've experienced complete ego death, right? Where I realized like this isn't reality, what we're living in, and the true reality is like
why isn't this reality? What makes this not reality?
it's real. It's only reality in a sense to our egos. Uh, and so like once you remove the ego's not you. You know, it's like it's a delusion. And
What is the
one
ego then?
the ego is just like it's everything that it's all your identities. It's like what makes us human in the physical world.
So if I was to remove my ego, and I think a lot about this, if I was to remove my ego and my identity, I, I would probably be, I picture myself in sort of like a meditative state, like because,
Hmm.
but the thing that grounds that idea is the fact that at the end of the day, the my perceptions of what heaven is, my perceptions of what consciousness is, my perception of God, my perception of spirituality, all exists in my brain. And without me, I don't think that stuff exists. I don't know,
Here's
but
the here's see that here's where I think that so like all of those things are human artifacts, right?
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but in in the telepathy tapes, like the autistics, when it they have a very hard time communicating because they have to use this type. They have to use letters to like communicate because they can't. They're nonverbal, and they have a very difficult time, and it takes them forever, and it takes so much strain on them because they're so used to being in this other world where like communication isn't with language. It isn't with objects or anything like that. It's just it happens, right? It happens, and it's not in a language way. We can't even. It's ineffable. It's like we can't even explain it, right?
Well, that's the point I'm trying to make because I don't the reason it's not like I'm not interested in this. It's like I can't my mind is like I don't know what this is. So I
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Does that
yeah,
make
yeah.
sense?
So
I don't
heaven to
know.
me
I
is
don't
what these autistics are talking about in the simplified way. Like I think heaven is what the hell they're talking about. Like heaven is this place where like your identity goes with like Quincy, your soul. Let's say the soul like is beyond the ego. It's beyond everything. There's this like uh wave, in an ocean of consciousness, and then that's Quincy, and it on this dimension it like it's kind of in this ego body, right? And we have this language we're trying to explain of what this is over here in this like waveform, and there's no way we can explain it. uh but but it's there, and that's a kid, one of the autistics die in the during like the seventh episode or something. um Sorry, for anyone listening. That spoiler
why
alert.
why why you
Uh, Spoiler alert. One of the autistics die. But
Oh wow, yeah, that's
but um they he communicates post death, and he was communicating on this hill with these other autistics all over the world prior to him dying, saying he was going to die. And so like his mom is talking about this in the podcast. Like she goes and she talks to these other autistic kids, and they tell him like, oh yeah, he was saying he was gonna be dead soon. Um, but then they communicate. They're still communicating to this guy named his name's John Paul. Um, Post death.
dude, you know what you sound like to me? You sound like the people who found Jesus after he was like resurrected. That's the image that's coming in my mind. Like, oh, that's a whole nother thing. That's just a story in the Bible, but that's what it sounds like. It sounds
100%.
like like it's
It is a religious awakening for me, to be honest, because it's the thing is like I would I had I've heard of these things, and I just couldn't jump. I couldn't make that jump to be to because it's like I didn't know it. There's no way I could prove that existed. Same thing you're asking me, the same questions you're asking me. Now I'm getting to the point where I want to find one of these autistics and like in reality, talk to them, um, and like see if they can hear my thoughts, right? And a lot of these people, they're trapped too. That's what's crazy, is
that
they're
is
just trapped
very
in this
thought.
body, you know? And everyone thinks, oh, it's this retarded person. They can't even think and learn or whatever. They're just like, they're just completely out of it. No, they're
Mhm.
not out of it. They're like in there. And that's the sad part about it, is like, not only that they're in there, they're fucking like, this is true intelligence. It's God intelligence. You know what I mean? It's like,
Well,
from an IQ perspective, we look at it and be like, oh, they're retarded because they can't live in this like IQ world. But literally, they're tapping into what can only be described as God intelligence. You know,
you
because they
said
could
the word you literally said can only be described by who is doing the describing. You were doing the describing.
me. I'm doing the describing. But if I had the potential, so if I think we all have a latent potential to to communicate in this way, ESP in this other realm, and maybe that's what the Egyptians had access to, or whoever built the pyramids. I'm my and I've read books that talk about this, right? Like we, it's similar, and so a few things. The whole people get into these states. It's there's like autistic people that it's left brain. They have left brain damage, which makes them use
Wait,
more
time
of
out.
their right brain.
Wait. Every autistic person has left brain damage.
I don't know enough about it to say every, but from the book, so the book's called A Matter of Things,
Okay.
and it goes into it's a gigantic book, and it goes into like the science of the left brain and the right brain, more specifically the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere, and schizophrenics, autistics, um, the high creative types, like they do they look at their brain, and a lot of them have brain lesions, damage on their left brain, which left brain is rational, logical, you know, language, all of those things. And
Mhm.
so like they've these these autistics, they definitely have brain damage. They weren't like a lot of them weren't born with it. They had something in our environment that like is causing this.
Why
Um,
you say they weren't born with it? What?
because there's so just looking into the statistics on autistics, like it's not genetic. It's like there
Well,
20% of it is, or you could say 20% of it is genetic, like if you have inbred type shit going on, but 80% of it is like environmental toxins damage.
my belief has always been, from what I read, that it's random, just like anything else. Like, I don't know. I was born with fucking my eyes aren't normal, so I have to wear glasses, like stuff like that.
No, but no, I mean, you look into the autistic world. This starts getting into like uh just neurodevelopment disorders in general. You start getting into the research on that, and it's like,
Neurodivergent stuff.
I mean, so like tics, for example. I have tics, which is a form of Tourette's.
Uh-huh.
And so I'll like when I'm in a conversation, I'm talking about something. I've done it a few times. You just don't notice it. And like I'll just kind of like I'll kind of like twitch, right?
Yeah.
Um, and those are called tics. And it's a form of Tourette's. And you've probably seen the extreme version where people are like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've
doing the
seen it.
crazy
Yeah,
shit.
yeah, yeah.
The tics skyrocketed. Um, Roughly around like the 90s, the thousands. Autism, same thing, skyrockets. Now, in like 1 in 32 people have autism. Previously, it was like 1 in 5,000.
Uh-huh.
Um, it's definitely an environmental. It science shows that it's definitely something environmental and
Well,
probably combinatory of all of the toxins in our
when you
environment.
say so when you say that, I like here's the big picture. I'm just this is what I'm about to say does is not there's no facts to back this up. But my mind goes to like, what if there's just like another stage of human evolution? What
Yeah,
if 200, 400, 500 years from now we'll all like have telepathy and shit like that? I don't
yeah,
know,
that'd be
but
sick.
like because there's a lot of other stuff that has come up over the last, I don't know, century or so that like have skyrocketed. I'm like, I don't know. We can make these claims about the environment, but I'm like, I don't. It seems too random to me.
Could
No,
I mean it
well,
could
no,
be.
no. The okay. The rise and all of this stuff doesn't seem random, but like the way it's happened. I mean, but I don't know anything about it. I don't research this stuff. I'm not like I don't know. But
I mean, I've dug into it a little, decent enough to to be dangerous. Uh, I mean, there's a shit ton of research, and like you can definitely say, I mean, there's a lot of people that go against this, but I think it's like to refute it because it starts getting into big pharma
so
and vaccines is the reason why there's a lot of people refuting it.
I have another question.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very we're coming up on our time, but
Mm-hmm.
I have another question. So if you're like here's the leap that I hear you're saying. You're saying that these autistic people may be tapped into a spiritual realm, but you're saying that autism may be from environmental stuff.
Yeah.
Why can't it be from like human development? Let's say we're growing to the point where we're going to be tapped into this spiritual state, but it seems like the environment is triggering us to be more spiritual. Is that what you're saying?
I think it can be both things, and I think both things are happening because in that pot in the telepathy tape, so they talk about like normal people starting to be able to do ESP with the autistic person, like a mother. Like they talk to a few people that start to become right, and so they're not like they even talk about a few people, normal people like you and I, or seemingly normal, being able to access this hill place and like even dreams, right? Like communicating with on this hill via dreams and then going to talk to the autistic person when you're awake and they're communicating like, oh yeah, we just talked about this in the hill. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, yeah.
this internet place in the consciousness world realm. And it's like I I think so I think that these people you and I had talked about this in a podcast. I can't remember what the CIA did an investigation around like people that have like these um, psychic abilities, and they said that like a very small. There are people who have these psychic abilities, but it's like a small percentage. There's like some YouTube video that we watched where like there's files that show like, hey, the CIA did all this investigation, and like people do have like can remote view and do SP. I can't remember what the that report was called, but you and I talked about it before. Um, my thinking is like we it, the environment caused this a lot of this brain damage. Um, some of it could be like you were talking about, some type of evolutionary step up. But I think it's like some people have this ability through natural evolution, but we've just now become, because we have so many nonverbal autistics now, that it's become so frequent that now someone can get on a podcast and talk to fucking 50 of these people. Um, and everyone's doing it. Whereas like 100 years ago, there was basically none of these people. And so then all you had was like these few people, an oracle or something, ancient Greece, and they had this ability, but you can't prove it. You're not going to believe one person. Now that we have like fucking 50 of these motherfuckers, where you and I could go down to the autistic center and talk to one of these people potentially, um, it's just, it's become more widespread. And so then that's kind of how I see it. But you and I potentially, if we go into a room and we get sensory deprivation, according to some of these studies, you could start doing ESP. Um, I think it's
I
not
want to
evolution.
see that.
I think we've forgotten it all. I think like we used to have special innate abilities,
Really?
maybe
When? Free
pre-language,
language?
like where you
But why don't
you had
other
to
animals
communicate.
have it? Why don't
That's what I'm saying. How do you know other animals don't? Right? Like dolphins communicate very well. Is it sonar? Um, that's what humans think. Uh, Dogs know when we're coming home. What is that? I don't know. What is it? It's clearly rocked my world. I started listening to it at the end of last year and into this year, and it's honestly it's gonna it's definitely changed my life, the way I think about spirituality and everything.
well the I'm almost done with that awareness book. But yeah, I think about these things too, but it's like I feel like you're in a state where you're trying to take that next step and like connect it with something like a belief or something. And I'm like, I can't, for some reason I don't have that desire. I don't know what it is. I'm curious, but I'm like, I don't know if that's spirituality. I don't know what that is. I have no idea. And I'm like, what if it's something with like I can see, like I said, I think that there is a next step. Well, it's a belief because I'm not in the future and I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that humans are going to be very different in thousands and probably millions of years from now if we still exist. And I think that's the next step. Again, that's just the way I think about it. And that's when I hear stuff like that, I'm like, I can definitely see that. But as for right now, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how. Maybe because my only connection with spirituality has been through Christianity. We definitely were, well, when I say we, I meant like when I was raised as a Christian, we looked into like I studied all the Hinduism and
Hmm.
Japanese teachings and all of that kind of stuff, which kind of all made sense to me. And they all share this underlying premise, right?
Hmm.
Um, but I'm still in my like, okay, I don't know.
Yeah,
That's the part that's getting me, man.
yeah. I mean, what would you define as spirit? Like, so spirituality, the
That's a
shortened
very good
version is
question.
spirit.
That's a very good question, man.
So does
Um,
Quincy have a spirit?
mm, do you think I have a spirit?
Like what is the spirit or soul? Like, do you think there's a,
I
and
hope
don't think
so.
about it in the way, yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
hope.
Yeah.
I really do hope because
Hmm.
like I don't know, man. I have no fucking idea.
And see, that's where it's like Quincy is a part of your ego. So it's like whatever, that's how the language you and I use. And so to these autistics, it's like there's no there isn't a name. Like they're not calling each other names. Communication is just completely different, right? It's just
Uh-huh.
like
But how do you communicate with another person and identify that person if that person doesn't have an identity?
that's that's where like we can't wrap our heads around it because like
Exactly. Like I'm like
they
it,
talk about it a little bit in the podcast. I forget specifically what they say. Like she even at the last episode, she asks a lot of them about God and like what their thoughts are on like God and stuff. And it all comes back to like a lot of things I've learned about spirituality. And it's just like yeah, I mean, we're I believe in everything now. Like like things like reincarnation um is a crazy thing to think about, but now I got within the new information that I've gotten from these telepathy tapes, like I understand how reincarnation can be possible. um it's like you think the problem is us humans think about reincarnation because they think Randy Gibson is going to be present, right? But that's not what it is. It's like I have this
no,
like
I think about that a lot. So, like, let's say that reincarnation is a thing. You would never know. Like,
exactly.
that's the problem. Like, if let's say that reincarnation is a thing and I come back like I was another person in another life, well, if each individual is different, then how do you tap into that? Like how do you tap into a consciousness that can identify you are this in this stage and you are that in another stage?
Yeah. So I think the information, at least to these autistics, like our egos here to collect information, be creative, create things, right? And
You're
that
putting a lot
lasts
of
forever.
faith in these autistic people, man. That's
Dude, I mean,
you're like talking about them like they're a gateway to heaven or something. I'm like,
dude, I look at them and now I think of them as like as a Catholic thinks about a saint, as
Jesus Christ,
like
man.
Christians think about saints, like these like they're almost like deities on earth to have
Well,
access.
I will support you 100% finding one of those people, man.
Yeah, I'm
I'm
gonna
into it. Like, I want to know, like, because right now it's like I see, like, I think I said this, like, my cynicism about like media is like at an all-time high right now.
yeah
I hear something and it's recorded and it has production value, it's probably bullshit.
yeah.
Which is why I like you random YouTubers like who are in their back rooms or something. I'm like, I trust that guy more than like, you know,
Yeah.
but at the
This would be
same
a huge
time,
hoax if it was. Which I mean, we've had huge hoaxes in human history.
no,
Like
I'm very you got me curious, man. The thing about it is I'm trying to figure out if I have more time because dude, like running your own business is not fun. Well, it that's another subject, but it's time consuming,
for
and I
sure.
want time to dive into this because
I
I
soaked
do.
it up, man. I soaked it up, and I was like, you know how I thought about it. I told my brother, I was like, if if you're not listening to these, you're basically denying God.
What, dude? Are you gonna like next year? You're gonna have like a robe and like preaching the gospel to autistics or something?
I I mean, we need to get these people fucking like talking, and like they need to be involved in physics. They need to be involved in like a shit ton of
I'm
stuff, man.
down with it, man. I'm
Yeah,
down with it.
yeah.
But
I'll let you know. It'll probably be difficult, but like I definitely want to try to communicate to one of them and see and experience it for myself.
or support someone who does.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
know.
And watch it happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll be down with that, man.
All
But
right,
yeah.
man.
All right. Well, I think that's all our topics for today.
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
So
Good. Good
I
talking,
want to
sir.
continue this wait in a week or so, man.
Yeah. Let's do 2 weeks, and then it'll give us the time for shit to happen.
Okay. All right. Cool. Cool. All right, man.